I think some of the key things are, what do you want? What do you want your business to be? And I always say, start with what's the life that you want, first of all, and then build your business around that. It's all too dangerous to, be kind of living to work as opposed to working to live, and that is super, super important. Figure out, so what's the life that you want? And then we, find ways to say, well, how do you build your business, and how do you, get people in your business that are going to enable that kind of life?
Welcome to the B2B Digital Marketer Podcast, a podcast helping you to end your struggle with digital marketing, helping you to pave a new and better path to target and capture your ideal customer. Each week, we teach you how insiders and experts debunk the dreary and become engines of innovation. Now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Okay, B2B DM gang, I'm looking forward to the discussion that I have today because it's something that I think all of us need to do from a differentiation perspective in regards to thinking about the resources that can make a difference for our business, right? It is a global world. It's getting more connected at an ever increasing rate. And we need to be more mindful of what's going on outside of our four walls. And to help us with that, I have Noel Andrews on the show with me today. Noel, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no worries, Jim. Great to be here.
Now, before I actually, start asking you some questions and we start getting into the discussion and dialogue, if you could, please share with folks how you're going to add value to a B2B digital marketer today.
Hey, no worries. So I'm going to be talking, we're going to have a good conversation around kind of how you create really, really great customer experience through having really great team members.
And so talking about that, you have, you acquired an organization back in 2018 called JobRack. So if you can tell us a little bit about why you acquired JobRack and then what JobRack really focuses in on and how they differentiate in this sea of complexity, I think that would be very helpful.
Hey, no worries. So like many online entrepreneurs and business people, I'd read the 4-Hour Work Week. And I'd been looking around for kind of businesses for a while, things, what were the skills that I had? I'd spent 15 years in kind of corporate IT and kind of up to and including director level roles. Spent a few years kind of helping people in the remote world, kind of with kind of hiring consultancy and even in interview coaching as well. And then JobRack came up for sale and it was pretty small and it had been kind of a bit of a side hustle, but they built it up well and then kind of let it kind of become a sideline and kind of almost be mothballed. And it was either going to get sold or shut down. And it was the kind of key thing for me. It was niched right down. It wasn't just another hiring site. It had a very, very kind of specific niche, and that niche is Eastern Europe. So helping people hire really, really great remote people from Eastern Europe. And just that fact that it was already niched down and had a kind of an existing brand, despite it being pretty small, just kind of ticked the boxes for me. And jumped in and got my got that kind of entrepreneurial tick in the box of not only getting a business, but also actually going through the acquisition and the buying process as well.
Okay, so obviously your accent isn't from that area. So tell us how that happened.
It's not indeed, yeah. So I'm London-based, born and bred in London here in England, and I'm part of a community called the Dynamite Circle. So it's around 1,500 online business people and entrepreneurs all across the world, and all kind of broadly focused around kind of location independence or building kind of flexible businesses. Still pretty sizable, but not too many people looking to be kind of tied to an office or one particular place. And it was through that community. So the actual JobRack was born in the community. Two guys had the idea and wanted to bring the power of kind of at that point Eastern European software developers to businesses that were looking to hire but couldn't afford to hire in San Francisco and in kind of the US or the Western world. And found this absolute sweet spot of incredible kind of quality talent, great education, hard work ethic, and low cost of living. And then that's the kind of nirvana that is Eastern Europe. And they built it up through there, but they had a bigger business that they were both focusing on, and so this was a side hustle, and it was time for it to move on and to find someone new to kind of drive it forward, and that was me.
Well, and okay, so then thinking about where it started and where it is now and where it's going, how should a B2B digital marketer be thinking about JobRack and the things that you solve for?
Sure. So primary way is we help people to hire, and hiring is hard, right? So for anyone that's ever hired, hiring is hard. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it. It's a really, really hard thing to do. And there's tons and tons, there's thousands of services out there, whether they be online job boards, whether they be, freelancer platforms like kind of Upwork or Fiverr, or, done for you recruitment services. But what a lot of them don't do is actually help you like person to person, right? They're kind of often, it's a platform and you sign up to it and you still have to do it all yourself. I personally, I really, really pride myself on being really helpful and friendly. So I jump on a lot of calls with people. I do lots of very kind of personal videos and using a tool called Bonjoro, for instance. And that's what we're about. We really want to help people. So, we have a job board as part of the service. It's kind of DIY, but even within that, we're giving people a lot of help. And then we've got our kind of done with you and done for you services where we're like your kind of mountain guide or your Sherpa, helping you to the top of the mountain, doing a lot of the work for you and kind of just signposting and really kind of guiding you along that way. So that's kind of what we're about. So if you are a small to medium sized business and you're not really sure how to do things and you'd like to be able to actually talk to a real person, then that's where we come in. So, really, really high touch and helpful and friendly. And, just ultimately we're there to kind of make people happy and help them hire really, really great people from Eastern Europe.
Well, as you're talking, I start thinking about, being ready for that. Right. So, I was talking with a friend of mine who is there's a couple ways you can actually describe it, but he refers to it as being an exit strategist. So you have a smaller size company that wants to set themselves up in order to be sold because, maybe I have a founder and I don't have any kids to leave the business to, or, whatever the condition may be, I became ill or, hey, it's time to retire. Or it just, there's all kinds of conditions, but a lot of those organizations, because of size and what they do and how they do it, they're not really prepared, to try to put the for sale sign, on the door because, their processes haven't been documented. You have key and core people who are retaining all of the enterprise or the organizational information, and then they go to try to sell it, and it's like, oh, you're going to have a problem, right? So I start thinking about that same scenario. If I'm saying, hey, I want to go hire, somebody to fill a particular responsibility or a role. So if you were to talk about somebody who is, has some of those barriers, and I know you talked about the, do it yourself and then done for you and all of that, is what are some of the things they need to be thinking about to make sure that they're ultimately going to have what would be their determination of success?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing is I'll always say to people is just jump on a call with me and this kind of strategy type side of things, and a bit of a grand word, but figuring out what to do is exactly what I help people do. And sometimes I'll do that and then they'll hire a week later. Sometimes they'll hire a year later, or sometimes never at all, because I'll often tell people that they come to me thinking, I think I need to hire, and we'll work through it. And actually the answer is that they shouldn't hire. And I work on I think it's Zig Ziglar quote, which is, you can have anything you want in the world so long as you help other people get what they want. And that's kind of like a guiding principle for me. So I will, if I don't think someone should hire, then I'm going to tell them, or if I think they should hire less roles or get a service to do it, I'm always really open with that, because that, for me, that's what makes the world go round and, keeps us all kind of, being successful. So I think some of the key things are, what do you want? What do you want your business to be? And I always say, start with what's the life that you want, first of all, and then build your business around that. It's all too dangerous to, be kind of living to work as opposed to working to live, and that is super, super important. Figure out, so what's the life that you want? And then we, find ways to say, well, how do you build your business and how do you, get people in your business that are going to enable that kind of life? So whether that's, you need to get some services instead of hiring people, perhaps, or whether it's that you need a, combined role of like an operations manager that will also do customer support, but they're also improvement focused and, they're going to write the SOPs for you. And they're the kind of things that we work through. But it all starts with what's the life you want? And then, how can we structure your business or help you structure your business to support that?
Well, and even today, when you start talking about, digital marketing in the B2B world is, before we started recording, we talked about organizations being thrust, into the need, to be successful at it. And anytime, we have those conditions that are forced upon us, we start looking around and seeing what other people are doing. And quite frankly, we end up start going down the same path that, now becomes a very crowded path, and it's, difficult to move forward. So I may be part of an organization of, say, hey, I'm one or two people, but when you start looking at marketing and digital marketing, and I start looking at automations, and I start looking at, connecting to, the sales, stacks and information, and, CRM systems. And I mean, it can get, quite complex, and I do need, some people to help me, but, going overseas, if I'm here in the States, for example, that could be, how could I make that less of a threat or a worry?
Yeah, absolutely. So how can it be less of a threat or a worry? Well, on the financial side, first of all, right? The cost to hire someone, outside of the US, especially in Eastern Europe, will typically be around kind of 40 to 50% of what you'd pay locally. So what we often find is it enables people to hire considerably before that they otherwise would do. And that enables them to grow their business. And then sometimes that they will then move to a hybrid model. They'll have some kind of people close by locally in the US in the future, but they start out, in Eastern Europe or other regions of the world. More commonly, what we find is that they have either started in the US, but they realize that they can get a different kind of different caliber of people, certainly slightly different culturally, but for good reasons, but at a lower cost, and they can build their business in a kind of a slightly different way. And more often than not, they then keep hiring from Eastern Europe. It is kind of my speciality because of the the benefits you get, just a work ethic and a kind of, there's not the kind of sense of entitlement that we often find when hiring locally, here in the UK or in the US especially. And that's a bit of a tricky thing to manage with some of the current generations coming through. That where people in regions of the world that have had a bit of a harder time of things over the past kind of 20 years or so. Actually, they've just got this work ethic that they want to work really, really hard. They want to have a better life, and they want to earn more money. And working remotely, as the whole world has now just discovered that remote work is a thing. It's not just the secret's kind of been kind of blown out, and everyone now knows about this remote work thing that previously was a bit of a preserve of kind of the minority. So I think, in that sense, first of all, there's a financial risk that you can reduce that financial risk. The other side of things is that it gives you a competitive advantage because, even now with the world kind of opening up to remote work, the vast majority of, certainly US businesses are not hiring remotely. And they're certainly, if they are hiring remotely, they're not looking outside of the US. So it gives you a competitive advantage that you can go and get skills that, perhaps are, just simply not available even in your local area or in the US at all. Anyone that's looking for a really senior marketer, for instance, or a senior developer, the demand is so hot right now. The salaries they're commanding is absolutely crazy, especially in the US and the UK, and you just can't find them. You can't attract them. And so, you get a competitive advantage by looking kind of further afield. And then the other piece is the work ethic and the level of education. So you're getting skills and aptitude that, are really hard to find locally. So it's not just a case of, maybe 20 years ago, people thought about, offshoring to kind of India or the Philippines. They saw it as a way of getting cheap labor that, often might be seen as being kind of, a lower standard than what you get locally. And now that's just not the case. Now you can be getting a better standard for lower cost, and then just driving your business in that way. So you can often hire 2 or 3 people for the, with different skill sets or more of the same for the same price as you might have previously, been kind of a bit scared to be doing locally.
So as you're talking, I start thinking about 2 issues that I think had impacted a lot of people who are already, having people who were, offshore or overseas doing work, and that is COVID, and then the other being connectivity. And so when you start looking at, COVID, like for example, there were some, quite significant, just say Fortune, 500 companies that had a lot of presence in India, and then COVID decimated, a lot of their, IT operations, because of that, and their support operations. So when I start looking at also, Canada still going through some type of shutdown, and all these different places, Italy shutting back down, all that. Well, I mean, when I start thinking about, doing that, is that a risk? And so a lot of these organizations have said, oh, okay, well, we need to be more mindful of that and not have, such a significant presence, offshore, overseas, for risks such as that. I mean, we're in the pandemic era, as I call it, and COVID is just, I think, one of the next. I I mean, we've seen it happen. It's been building, and Bill Gates, talked about this, a couple of years ago, and so I mean, there's that wall of worry, and then again, the whole connectivity thing. So, again, how can I get past these, issues that have affected so many already?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a couple of key things. So one is hire from a place that's got really strong infrastructure and that is like standard in people's homes. So if you're hiring in a country or, where you've got a big multinational corporation that's outsourcing to a big kind of outsourcer, right? And all of those staff are going into an office or they're going into a call center. And perhaps at home, they don't have a lot of space. Maybe it's multi-generational kind of living. So they're living with lots of family members. They don't have anywhere quiet to work, and home working is maybe not the norm. That's a real problem, right? Because if suddenly they can't go to the office, then, what do they do? That can be very disruptive. In Eastern Europe, especially, the infrastructure is absolutely incredible. My staff in Eastern Europe have got a better internet connection for a lower cost than what I have here in London, which offends me a little bit, but is amazing at the same time. And that's just kind of par for the course. That's what they have. Also, when you're hiring remotely, you are hiring, with the intention that they're working from, their home typically. So part of what I do when I'm hiring someone is I'm looking to say, what is your home office setup? How are you going to work? How are you going to be able to concentrate and, not be distracted? And so you're almost doing that very intentionally. So if there is a lockdown, well, actually, the work isn't affected because they're still at home where they plan to be anyway. And so actually, there's a lot less disruption than if you are with a big outsourcer in that sense. Equally, in terms of kind of specific countries, we've seen a huge variety of approach across the world from Australia, New Zealand, which total lockdown in the sense of closing down the borders, but haven't had huge lockdowns. Obviously they're going through a few right now, but not to the same extent than countries like the UK and Spain have had. And in Eastern Europe, for instance, where the governments can't necessarily take the kind of bailout approach that certainly here in the UK and Europe that we've done. So they've kind of continued life as normal, or a lot more normal. But they've put in, evening and weekend curfews and kind of just a very different approach. So, certainly for me and my team that's all across Eastern Europe and all of my customers, we've seen literally zero negative impact from any of the kind of lockdowns that have happened across Eastern Europe. Because, like I said, we're intentionally hiring remotely in the first place, and they've got great infrastructure. And that's one of the key things. There's no extreme weather in Eastern Europe. Things getting a little warm. It's kind of nearly 40 degrees in much of Eastern Europe right now, which is hot. But aside from kind of temperature in the summer months, there's no, we don't get any typhoons, hurricanes, earthquakes, anything like that. So kind of that keeps things on a pretty stable footing.
Okay. So, as I'm sitting here and I think about, the whole, process of, and you talked about the strategy element, associated with, going from what we're doing internally and what I'm doing internally and what I need to do, and progressing. How much does an organization, to get a little bit more specific, need to have their systems, and their processes, documented? I mean, how important is that?
So it depends what you're hiring someone to do. The best tip that I can ever give is, let's say you're hiring a virtual assistant, right? And they're going to come in and they're going to help do some of your social media outreach, for instance, or maybe they're going to do LinkedIn outreach for you as an example for a marketing firm that, wants to get more customers. If you've got it documented, great. If you don't worry about it. As you train them, hit record, whether it's Loom or whether it's Zoom, whatever you're doing, and then get them to document it. Because the best person in the world to document it is not you. Because we know too much, right? We've got all this assumed knowledge. If we try and document something, and I am not a fan at all of documenting things because it's really laborious, and you have to, when you're writing an SOP, the way that you want to do it, or standard operating procedure, is do it such that, your nan or your mum could follow those instructions with zero kind of knowledge about the technology. So for me, the best person to actually document these things is the person that you're training. So, and that's a great little kind of onboarding task. So if you've got them documented already, great. If you haven't, it really doesn't matter. There's ways that you can teach them, do one, show one, kind of get them to do one. And, they can then document it and they can improve things and probably do a better job than you because, you're hiring them to do these kind of tasks. As kind of CEOs and owners of businesses, there's many things we're great at, but there's lots of things we're not. And so, kind of hire for that sort of thing. So yeah, you don't need to be in a perfect world by any means.
I think that was very helpful. And also helpful from a tools perspective. And you and I even talked about one particular tool that you're using for Zoom to document notes that I found interesting. And I wasn't necessarily going to talk about this, but I think, you bring up some very interesting points in regards to, what can we leverage and utilize in order, to have a better outcome. So if you could tell us a little bit about some of these tools, and also the new one that you just joined with on your Zoom account as well.
Yeah, of course. So one that I use like every day is called Loom. So Loom. And it's a really simple kind of screen share recording video capture tool. So I use it on my phone, and I use it typically every morning. I'll do a quick kind of good morning. Hey, how's it going to the team? And then I'll just record a quick video and I'll kind of post it in Slack to the team. I use it all the time when I'm just kind of recording how to do something, or I've got this little problem and I want to send it to one of our developers, because if a picture tells 1,000 words, then a video is like 1,000,000 words. It's even better. So I use Loom a lot. I use that a lot with customers as well if I want to do a quick screen share. So that's really, really good. I use Bonjoro. Bonjoro is like my favorite tool. Bonjoro is again, it's a little video tool, and you kind of have a to-do list, and so you kind of add people to it, and you can automate it. So for instance, I guess most of your audience are probably familiar with abandoned cart kind of processes. So you've got an e-commerce site of some kind, someone comes to your site, they add something to the basket, to the cart, and then they don't check out. And if you're on like a big site, you'll often get kind of an exit pop-up saying, hey, don't go, we'll give you 10% off. Or sometimes maybe an hour later, you get an email and it's like, hey, we noticed you were in the checkout, but you didn't complete, here's 10%. And I had one of these sequences and I didn't like it very much. It was a bit salesy. And I'd been using Bonjoro for some different purposes for a while. And I thought, what if I just actually, when someone abandons cart, what if I add them to my Bonjoro list and I send them a personal video, like, typically within a day or so of them, not checking out. And I started doing it. And I was worried it would be a bit creepy at first, because there's one thing to get, an automated email. There's another thing to be like, hey, Jim, it's Noel here from JobRack. I noticed you were on the site and you didn't check out. Just wanted to check in and see if there was, if you had any questions or anything I could help with. And so I did it very cautiously at first. And I was open. I was like, hope this isn't too creepy. And Bonjoro is great. It makes it so just things get added to your to-do list. You record a quick little video just on your mobile. I do them as I'm walking around typically, as I'm walking to the gym or kind of going for a daily walk, do some of these. And then it just fires it off in a nice little templated email, lands in their inbox. It typically has a little GIF of the first second of the video. So people will often see me like waving like that in their inbox. The engagement is crazy. I get like I think it's a 91% open rate. And something like a 65% click-through rate, where they'll click through, they'll watch it, and then they'll often kind of respond to me. And people really love them because it's personal. Remember the days when we started putting like "Hi Jim" at the first, at the top of an email, right? That was clever once upon a time. Now we all know that that's a system. There are some AI tools out there that can kind of fake and do deep fake kind of videos at this scale. But people can clearly see that my completely unpolished videos are not, there's no AI going on here. It's just me being like, hey, it's Noel here. And so for me, I'm all about the personal touch. And so I like doing things that are hard, but do not scale, because, competitors won't do them because they're hard and they don't scale. So Bonjoro is another one. And then finally, the one we were chatting about is fireflies.ai, which was a recommendation to me this week. Great little tool that you integrate it with your calendar. And whenever it sees a calendar or an appointment or a meeting that's got a online kind of meeting link, so Zoom or Google Meet or anything like that, it joins the meeting as a participant, stays silent in the background, it records the meeting, but then it transcribes the meeting. So it turns it into text for you. It seems to be really, really good at that as well. And then it goes one step further and the AI starts coming into play and it analyzes the text. It pulls out sentiment. So it pulls out kind of, happy, sad, or neutral. It can pull out the actions from the meeting. And there's ways that you can help it do that even more effectively. It pulls out questions. So the use case that I was recommended for was to record kind of sales calls and discovery calls, and then just use this to kind of pull out and refer back to and pull out like commonly asked questions that I can then have in an FAQ section, FAQ kind of like post or section or even video that I send to people in advance of discovery calls, which then will help to save my voice from saying the same thing, multiple times a day, multiple times a week. And then means that we can get into the much more valuable portions of discovery calls when you're engaging with clients, really having the real meat of it, as opposed to the questions that everybody asks that are still important. They still need to know, but it's much better to get into specifics with them.
Well, I think that's good. Talking just to even that feature right there. I mean, oh gosh, that's a huge impact to have that occur. So that is that recommendation, what you're talking about, is one of the recommendations that people who are, consultants and experts around how to have more effective meetings. That's one of the recommendations they have, is the prep before the meeting. What do you do? So I think that's a very valuable tool. Okay, so we had talked about some of the changes, why you acquired, some of the tools that you're using, but I would dare to say for me, as well as for most others, and that's why I want to ask you, is we've had to rethink what we've done. And you even talked about that outcome. What do we want to have as an outcome? That has changed, because of what we've gone through in the past, 18 months or so. So what are some of the things that you have decided to rethink and then therefore take a different action on?
Oh, great question. I'm looking to reduce, so I'm hiring for myself at the moment, which is, if you've ever heard the kind of analogies around like kind of the dentist's children and the state of their teeth, or kind of cobbler's children, the state of their shoes. It's quite interesting when I come to hire for myself, and really I have to be hyper intentional about really slowing down. So one of the things that I want to do is actually take a little bit of a step away from some of the operations. And we are focused on wowing our customers at every single step. And that is quite interesting when I start looking and saying, right, how do I, not work kind of 60 hours a week? How do I kind of tailor this so that I can, prioritize life? Because, life is short, and I kind of want to have a really good kind of life work balance. And I say it in that order very intentionally. So for me, I'm being very, very intentional about figuring, right, what kind of people do I need within JobRack? And I've got a fantastic team right now. And we just need to expand it and, keep going in that kind of direction. And what are the really important things? What are the really important things for me to do? And therefore, what are the other things that I can delegate and get other people to do? I've just hired in the past few weeks an amazing kind of personal assistant to do things for me across business and personal life as well. And she's fantastic. And, all of my team, I'm looking for people that are kind of adaptable and flexible, that I can just kind of throw things at, and, they will, here's what we want to achieve, and that they can go and kind of figure things out and come back with kind of proposals and solutions for how we should do it. So I think the big thing for me has been, thinking who can do tasks, not how should I do tasks. That's probably the biggest thing, because I want to free up time to spend time with friends, spend time with family, and and travel. Certainly a lot more than has been possible in the last 18 months. But just have that kind of like the life that I want. Okay,
so thanks for sharing that. Now let's flip that just a little bit. So I'm sitting here and I'm a B2B digital marketer, whether I'm in a small, I'm by myself, or, I'm part of a small team. Maybe I'm even partial, right? So in other words, I do this as well as, other things. How should I be rethinking?
So think who, not how, is the kind of the biggest one. So, when you've got a task, and I picked this up from one of the many, productivity books and kind of inspirational books that I've read, that's the biggest thing. So when you're looking at your to-do list, don't think, or even projects list, don't be thinking, how should you do it? Think who could do it. And all too often we're looking down at a kind of a to-do list of things to do. And there's so many things on there that are like, I refer to them as $5 an hour tasks, $5 an hour. You could pay someone to do it. Your hourly rate is considerably more than that. And I know like you said, the kind of partial kind of side of things, business owner, we're running, maybe still running some consulting work, maybe still running a job at the same time. I've been there, and it's tough. And even more so is to think about, well, how can I just get a little bit of help? And it doesn't need to be intimidating. So oftentimes people will think, I can't hire yet. I'm not earning enough money, or I can't spare the money, or it's too expensive, or it'll be too time consuming. And that's where we really focus. We can get really, really high quality people for, you could hire a part-time assistant, or maybe just kind of like 10 hours, kind of 10 hours a week, even at, kind of like, $5, $6 an hour, really not much money, but you can get a lot out of someone like that. And it's not, you don't have to kind of manage them on a very kind of task by task basis. We can get really, really smart people that can really enable you. So, one of the slowest tasks for me to get rid of that I should have done years ago is bookkeeping. Right? I'm still categorizing my own transactions in Xero, which is crazy. And I've got probably one more week of that, and then that's going to get handed over to Andrew, my assistant. And there's tasks like that which are just crazy for me to do. So, but sometimes it takes us a while to kind of catch up. So that would be the thing. We can start very, very gently for just less than $100 a week or so, getting really, really good people just helping you, and then you can build over time. So it doesn't need to be that your first hire is $2,000 or $3,000 a month or anything like that. Really, really great full-time assistants can be, really great ones for, $800 to $1,000 a month US. So just that would be the big thing. Think who can help me and how can I start small? And again, always happy to kind of help people out and just kind of, just chat through those kind of things. Because sometimes you just need the inspiration and the art of the possible to kind of help you get moving.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up some really interesting points, right? It doesn't have to be a big chunk. It doesn't have to be something that's going to also have a significant monetary impact or financial impact. And so when I start thinking about budgets, I even think about me, reflecting back and looking when I was even working for an organization, and I had to do some of those tasks. And it's like, I could have just taken some of what I was making, and then therefore flipped it and made it 10x, because I'm not doing some of those mundane, mind-numbing tasks that, somebody else could, easily just pick up and just handle for me. So, talking about that rethink, I don't know if it's an age thing where you become a little bit more wise and think about that or what it is, but definitely, your help in thinking that way has been beneficial. So Noel Andrews, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. How can the B2B DM gang get in touch with you?
So nice and simple, head to Connect with Noel. So that's connectwithnoel, Noel.com. All my details there, and hit me up, and always happy to jump on a call.
Noel Andrews, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you for joining us. Go now to join the B2B DM gang in the B2B Marketer LinkedIn group, where you can connect with other B2B DM disruptors and get access to our B2B DM cheat sheets, checklist, and guides. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, please help by going to iTunes to rate, review, and subscribe. And share the show on all of your digital platforms. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. And always remember, you can automate your lead capture, but you must lure your lead.